What Drives You is brought to you by Ziegler, your premier source for equipping life and leadership coaches. Visit Ziegler.com and let them inspire your true coaching performance.
Yeah.
Welcome to What Drives You. I am your host, Kevin Miller, and thanks for joining me as we talk with today's most influential change makers to uncover what truly drives them and extract the big takeaways from their insights so you can integrate that wisdom and leverage the power of your unique inner drive and wake every day to your authentic, driven, and inspired life. In this episode, we're talking about physical transformation. And even as I say that, you can't have physical without mental. We're going to talk about that too. And my intent is to sift through the dramatic amount of information and gimmicks and one size fits all information and take it all to task somewhat to help us each get some clarity on what it takes to get our physical selves to the place we desire. I mean, most of us come to a time at some point in our lives and we do want some transformation in our bodies. We want to lose weight or gain muscle, trim and firm, or just feel better. But knowing what will really help us is kind of like finding a needle in a haystack these days. So I've brought on an expert who gets paid for results, period. Don Saladino is a coach, keynote speaker, and health entrepreneur that's coached actors and athletes and musicians for over 20 years. And I recently had renowned doctor and strength evangelist Gabrielle Lyon on the show. Hopefully you heard that series. It was after our conversation that she said, okay, now that I get you, Kevin, you need to have Don on the show. He's such a quality human, first off, and he's a true fitness guru as well. And Don he's worked with thousands of people to help them transform. As you'll see on social media, though, he has developed a big reputation for training some of the biggest names in Hollywood for the big screen, like Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively and Emily Blunt and Sebastian Stan and Anne Hathaway, Hugh Jackman, so many others. And what I appreciate about that, though, is you, Don, are being paid big bucks to make sure that not one move, not 1 minute is wasted. So there's no fluff. There's no going through the motions. Every effort has to produce results. And Don also works with anyone, all of us online. He's got online programs that can accommodate us. If you go to Don Saladino, like salad with an I-N-O, Saladino. And if you use a code DRIVE, you get 20% off all his ebook programs. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But Don, man, thanks for being here.
Wow, that was a hell of an intro.
Well,
that just flowed. I mean, sometimes I come on these calls and you could tell they're reading off a script. I mean, you like own that. I'm very impressed.
It's again, man, this is what I'm setting this up. This is you and me talking. You're in your gym. I'm in my studio. And this is what I want to talk about. And again, what I said there, I mean, you are working with people of all varieties. So old, young, men, women, all different types of things. And I do like that. I mean, they're, especially with the celebrity aspect, I mean, we all want results, but I think we end up distrusting stuff. And when you have somebody who's paying you to that degree to do it, you have to get results. So I feel like that is something that, in a sense, I mean, it sets you apart and it sets a stage here that, I mean, that is it. I mean, I assume you resonate that with when you're working with Ryan Reynolds, you got to get results right now.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you always got to get results. I mean, it's one of those things too, where, these people have to tolerate you also. It's, and it sounds funny, but I think where a lot of coaches mess up is that they come into situations where they start working with people of a big stature, of a big name, whether it's a billionaire or, I mean, I've worked with more notable names than almost anyone else in the training business probably ever. And most people, they would be, frightened. Most coaches would be just shaking by the time they went to work with these people. And that's not, you got to treat them like any human being. And I think that's number one. Like whether it's Ryan, whether it's, Calvin Klein, or whether it's, whoever it is, there's certain names I can't even mention. They want to come in and they want a result, and they want you to provide a service to them. And, Ryan's like a brother to me. I was with him this morning, and I'll be going to London with him when he lifts this, the strike lifts and all that good stuff. But I also understand that Ryan's had so much trust in me that I want to over deliver. I want to be there. I want to follow up with him later in the day. I'm constantly thinking about him. I'm constantly bringing things to the table that's going to make his life better and easier. And though he's the most low maintenance human being I've ever worked with. And I've trained over 40,000 1-hour sessions in my life. 40,000. He's probably the easiest person to ever work with, which is amazing. I'm still going in there every time, every session, honestly, like it's our first session. And that's where most trainers mess up, is that they get too cute, they get too familiar. They're sitting there telling the client about their problems. And the reality is you got to be able to deliver, a service. And even though we are friends, you still don't want to forget that as a coach.
Well, and I want to hit some big issues in this health and wellness pursuit and physical transformation, though. I mean, it's going to be interesting to all of us, me included, about how you ended up here working with these celebrities. How fun is that? But what got you into the industry to begin with before even the celebrity training aspect?
All right, man, I got to back it up because if you want to hear my story, I really started in the second grade. Like I had a massive hearing problem. I had a terrible stutter. I was coming home every day, just, at that time they would put kids in a class that was 5 kids when the classroom had 50 kids. And I'll never forget having to come out of this little classroom, and all the classrooms were filtering into like the cafeteria. It was me and 4 other guys. 2 of them were 3 of them were in my wedding party, ironically.
Oh, wow.
That's how close we ended up being our entire lives, and still are. But, I think at that time you start building a bond, but I think you develop some insecurities as a kid. And a big portion of my success, I obviously thank my mom and dad, but I remember coming home every day telling my mom, like, oh my God, like this is just basically, in my own words, at that age, this is miserable. And, I just like, I'm not good at anything. I just feel like, things aren't working out for me. So my dad was a baseball player growing up. He was pretty good. And he started, he worked in the catering business. Our family comes from a very blue collar type mentality. Worked in a catering hall, weddings, sweet 16s, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. We were the first kosher and non-kosher caterer in Long Island. So we grew up in this mentality of like, work hard. Like work smart, but it's more important to work hard. It's more important to get there. You work before school, after school. That was my grandfather's mentality. So my dad starts playing ball with me. And I remember going into a pickup game one day in school, probably in the 2nd or 3rd grade. And I just cleaned up. And I was just like, my arm was like way stronger. And I'm like, I was just doing things on the field that these kids couldn't do. And I came home to my mom. I looked at her. I'll never forget it. I said, oh my God, I'm good at something. She's like, you're going to be good at a lot of things. She's like, trust me, just, follow your passion and purpose. So now we're going to fast forward to college. I go off to play Division I college baseball. I was a 4-sport athlete in high school. I had a really good college career. Was a 2-year captain at Sacred Heart University. I had a great experience, a great coach, a great team. It was just a great experience for me. I had a couple tryouts afterwards, tried out with the Mets, the Mariners, got picked up to play professionally over in Europe. And, I basically ended up turning it down because I felt like at that time, it was time to move on. And other things I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I remember talking to my mom and being like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking about getting into law enforcement, like FBI. And she's like looking at me like, that's not like, why? Like, what's leading you in this direction? I'm like, I just need to be in the gym. I don't know. Like I daydream about it. Even in college, like my collegiate coach wouldn't make me come to team workouts. Like my team didn't want me coming to team workouts. Like they were like, keep them out of here type of thing. And, I had this obsession with training. I had this obsession with nutrition from the moment I went off to college. And I was balancing it out with baseball and getting a business degree. And my mom looked at me when I graduated. She said, what about these trainers? I'm hearing about these personal trainers out there. And I said, they don't make money. And she's like, don't worry about money. Again, I told you this at a young age, follow passion and purpose. And if you're feeling passionate about something, go after it. You're going to be successful. I told you this early on. You're going to be successful at anything you end up doing. So like right there was a big weight off my back. I threw a suit on the next day. I drive into New York City. I live about 50 minutes from New York City. I don't know at the time, north, south, east from west, because we would take the train in. I never really drove in the city by myself. My truck was too big to park in parking garages. I'm like double parking. I'm getting tickets. I have a resume. I'm running into clubs like, oh, New York Sport Club. Let me stop there. Oh, Crunch. Let me stop there. Oh, there's a new place called Equinox. Let me start there. There's a new place called Sport Club LA. Let me stop there. And I pretty much got hired at every single spot. And I got home and I looked at my parents. I think it was literally that night. And I was like, yeah, the company hired me on the spot. And I chose it. And I showed them where I chose to go off and work at. And like, it's literally like a few days later, I was in the city embarking on this path that I could never have imagined turned out this way. I mean, I went from being a trainer, making $25,000 a year my first year at Equinox back in 1999 to opening my own personal training business in 2000 to raising $5 million to open my first club, to then raising more money to open my second club, to partnering up with professional athletes to open an app company where I raised millions of dollars. And I really was, I was obsessed with the brick and mortar business, but I was also obsessed with being an entrepreneur while I wanted to be the best coach on the planet. And it was just this thing that grew. It didn't feel like work, even though I was at work, all day. Sometimes I slept at my own club. A lot of times, even with my family home, it evolved into something that, I couldn't have imagined. And backing up to 1999, when you think of like people talking about their 20-year plans, which kind of annoys me at times because everyone wants this like strategic plan and they all want like, what's your 5-year? What's your 10-year? What's your 20-year plan? I'm like, oh my God, what I do now didn't exist 20 years ago.
Totally.
Like, look at this. We're on a platform right now that didn't exist.
Yeah.
The web was like Ethernet cables. No one knew. We were using flip phones. There was no Zoom calls. There was no digital public speaking. I'm in 63 different countries. I have an online community of over 10,000 people. 63 different countries to think. And I'm not even like the biggest at this on the planet when it comes to coaches. I have friends of mine that timed it out better, that started 10, 15 years ago, that have massive communities. And but this didn't exist back then. So I think sometimes this following this passion and purpose is something that I think is very it's very undervalued.
Well, would you say though, I mean, with that, because I love talking about the aspect of passions, and God bless your mom, by the way, for
the best
for supporting you in that, but that you knew early on a direction you wanted to go. But I want people to hear that, but the modality, in essence, the vehicle of it didn't even exist, but you stuck with that. So whether you're doing it in this capacity with college sport, with high school, whatever, college sports, doing it there, you were looking at, gosh, do I pursue this, a job like, special forces or whatever, where I'm going to be allowed to have this physicality or whatever, or do I do it in this way? You stayed true to that, even though the platform that you're at today, you couldn't have even imagined. That's
there was so true, but there's so many different changes of direction, right? Like I mentioned brick and mortar. I mentioned working at a big box gym. I didn't mention going home to home, right? I was training 40 to 60 1-hour sessions home to home in New York City. That's tough to do a week. The thing that never changed ever since my parents put a broom in my hand at 7 years old when I was off sweeping at this catering hall, and I started working pretty regularly when I was about 12, 13. It was this level of work ethic. Like I remember putting a broom in my hand and wanting to be noticed. Sweeping. I'm sweeping. And I wanted them to look at me like this kid's a machine. Yeah. Right. And I would sweep faster and I would turn things over and I was trying to carry tables with guys that were twice my size. And there was just this level of, and I think that really was attributed to maybe what I thought was some damage that was being caused on me in the second grade. It's like, if you were to go back and try and, we can change this, I'd be like, no, don't touch that time. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's where I think everything for me was built. I feel like I'm having to go through that in the second grade. At that time, I'd come home crying and upset. And my mom was such a big support system. So was my father. But God, I would never want to go back and even adjust that. What felt like the worst thing in my life at that time ended up becoming my superpower. And I think it really just came down to the fact that I understood, like you can't control the outcome of things in life, but you can control the effort that you put into things.
Okay. And right there. I mean, I think you're getting into why I'm going to assume you are at the place you are now, as opposed to a trainer who knows how to lift a weight, break down a muscle, build it up better. You're tying it in, your own story of tying into, well, what drives you. That's the point here. Right. And I assume that that's what you are doing so well, that's gotten you to the place you are now with your clients, whether it's Ryan Reynolds or some dude off the street who's just trying to get a little more fit, is tying it into what is it that drives them? What is that connection point that's going to see them sustain through this transformation process? Fair?
I mean, listen, I think that's what coaching is, right? Like you've got to figure out each individual that walks in front of you, what makes them tick. I think that's really that's like the magic sauce right there, because not everyone's going to be how I am when it comes to this stuff. Like I enjoy eating clean. Like I'm 46 years old. I have an issue here. Like this month. Like I'm just on the cover of Muscle and Fitness for the third time since 2018. I enjoy this stuff.
Yeah.
This is not like Don, live a little or don't have a beat. You cannot no, I do what I do because I love it. So I can't expect people to dive into this with my mentality. And I think recognizing the individual who's in front of you and playing to their strong points is something that's really valuable, but also recognizing the areas that they need to improve. And then as a coach, it's your job to figure that out. And I think what happens a lot of times is that coaches will come in, or trainers, right? Because I consider them a bit different. And they'll look at someone and be like, here's the plan. And I'm like, wait a second, that's the plan for you, right? That's when you look at influencers online, a lot of them are just giving you the plan that they do. Like, this is what I did to create this. And the reality is, as a coach, needs to figure out what allows you to tick. And sometimes it's starting with a minimalistic approach. Sometimes it's going in there with less than what they need. But that's it. That's it. We're going to build some confidence. But why not more? I want to do more. Well, let's build it up. Let's take our time. Well, why aren't you giving me more? Like, this is like, I can handle more. I'm like, I know you can handle more, but the last 10 years you've gone into this on January 1st with this specific approach and you failed. So we're taking a different approach right now. And guess what? You're going to go have ice cream on Saturday night. Maybe you're going to be clean for the first 6, but we're not going to get things up indefinitely because that didn't work for you. So we got to try it now. And to be honest with you, it's so easy to motivate people. It really is. Like, most people will, I just want it. It's so easy to motivate someone if you show them progress. The reason why people aren't motivated is because they're sick and tired of getting on the scale and being like, oh, I gained 2 pounds. I just went no carb for the last 3 days. And oh God, I gained weight just from going out and having some nachos last night. Oh, it's not worth it. And they give it up. But like, if you show them an easier way to do things and you show them progress, you got to admit it. When you see progress, it's motivating. Like, if you jump back on a bike right now after your injury and we had you on a program and you just started progressing, you're going to be waking up every morning like, oh my God, I want to get out there, right? It's normally when things taper and things plateau a bit. And then, that's where a lot of the creativity with coaching has to jump in. But I think it's easy to motivate people.
And I want to come into that, but on something that you just said on the mental aspect, I thought this was really interesting. And I found this on your website. It was a testimony from Sebastian Stan, which folks, I'm sure they know. He's the Captain America Winter Soldier guy. I saw he's recently in a Pam and Tommy movie. But this is what he said. I've been working with Don through years of self-judgment and mental wars when it comes to fitness and life. Today, I'm giving myself a break and acknowledging the hard work we've done. Proud of what we've accomplished, pal. Love you. That right there, though, he didn't attest to, hey, he helped me put 2 inches on my bicep. It was the admission of self-judgment and mental wars. And if that's what he attributes to you as a coach, that says a lot more than putting inches on his bicep.
Thank you. And, I always say it starts up in here, right? For me, I just showed you a cover. That's not my goal. That's not my concern. My goal every day is to wake up and to feel great. My goal is every day to come into the gym and feel great. My goal is to be able to, feel like I have energy throughout the day, and I want to rinse and repeat that. It doesn't always work that way, but if I can focus on those things, then you know what? Yeah, the bicep ends up looking pretty good, or the abs end up looking pretty good. But I think sometimes we start obsessing over specific things that I like to call non-scale victories. Like, I have people focus on something I call NSVs. And it's like not getting on the scale and being like, oh, I'm up or down a pound.
Yeah.
Because last year I had a woman win my overall challenge and she gained a pound. And people were like, well, why would she win an overall challenge for you? There was thousands of people in there. I'm like, yeah, she had a 18-pound swing at someone that was roughly 125 pounds, which meant she put on 9 pounds of muscle and lost 8 pounds of fat, 17-pound swing. 9 pounds of muscle and 8 pounds of fat. That was a 17-pound swing. And she did it on a frame that was 125 pounds. That's extraordinary. For someone to do that who's already in shape and to change their whole mindset and the outlook, that's what I want. But if she was to get on a scale, she could turn around and technically say, well, Don's program sucked. Like, I gained a pound. I've been training my ass off for a year and I gained a pound. But to do what she did, and we measured through a DEXA scan, I was proud of, but more importantly, I was proud of the change she made upstairs.
Okay, let's hit some big level questions. I mean, so we got the masses out here. I mean, this is an aspiring audience, so they wouldn't be listening to this show. These are people who have health and wellness it's a priority for them. And yet there's a lot of frustration out there, a lot of guilt probably, and a lot of ups and downs, as you know, with everybody that you're working with as well. So if you look at us culturally and look at that demographic, so we're not talking about the McDonald's demographic, we're talking about this, but even here, and it's probably not one thing, but just what jumps to mind, where would you say here is where we are most missing it? Here's where, when we look at our efforts not producing results, give me some highlights of where we're missing it.
Yeah, I think we could check one box here that's going to pertain to both your health and fitness, but also from your business standpoint, right? I think it's this level of patience and understanding that these things take time. I had an old mentor of mine was giving a talk in front of a large group of people recently, and a friend of mine was in the crowd, and he brought my name up and he called me a 25-year overnight success. And I just laughed about it. And I was like, oh my God, when someone calls me and they're like, well, I want to do what you do in business, or how do I get on the cover of a magazine? Oh my God. Like, do you know, since college, I graduated in 1999, I have not showed up to the gym one day and walked out ever. Or I've never woken up on a day when I was supposed to train and said, I'm not going to train, unless, I was deathly ill or something was going on. And people would say, well, take it. Well, I take days off. This is for here. There's a level of consistency I approach this with from a business standpoint and a training standpoint. And a lot of people don't want that to take 20, 25, 30 years. They want it to happen instantaneously. I'm 46. I'm still hitting PRs. I'm still getting my body composition to a better place. It's a lot of work. I enjoy it, but this stuff takes time. So I think what happens is we see the internet and we see how quickly and how tasty things look right in front of us, and people just want it. And the second they get involved in business, or they start doing a program or a nutrition plan, and they hit a wall, they just kind of throw their hands up. Man, I almost missed 37 consecutive payrolls in my business. I kind of shut off my power. I'd Amex shut off my credit cards for 3 years. I was burning $100,000 a month for a straight year. I lit 1.2 million on fire over a straight year, trying to pull my business out of the hole after 07, 08, when Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns went down, because we lost all our corporate spending. And I own a golf fitness training facility in the city because my brother was a pro golfer. And, how I got into celebrities, I'll get into later on. But man, there were a lot of times where people could say, just toss it in. I couldn't. I did not. I couldn't. I had a personal guarantee. They would have went after my home. They would have went after my brother's home. The highest levels of creativity in our life, my life at least, was hit when my ass was against the wall, and I was like, holy, I'm gonna be dead tomorrow. And I had to go through that for a long period of time. People just don't want to go through that. At moments that I felt like were the worst of my life, I go back to that moment in second grade. I look back now and I'm like, thank God I had it, because I got an education in business and resiliency that you're not going to get from Harvard Business School. It's just not going to happen.
It's interesting you talking about being patient, because as let's take the celebrity trainer aspect too. I mean, that's the stuff you read in the tabloids. Oh, here's who at Ryan Reynolds or, Chris Hemsworth or whatever did to gain 100 pounds of muscle in 3 days. I mean, that's the kind of concept that we look at. And then, why wouldn't we get frustrated by comparison with our slow, methodical process that you're saying that's what it takes. And so speak to that, even the aspect of our perception of the celebrity aspect of changing transformation really fast. And yet in our lives, you're saying, no, it's going to take a long time.
No, I mean, Ryan's 47. I mean, he just turned 47 in October. I mean, he's been doing this since he's a teenager. I mean, he's been training. I mean, this is something that's part of his lifestyle. I mean, I don't know Hemsworth. I heard great things about him from several of my clients who shoot movies with him. And like, this has been part of his lifestyle. So when I see actors come in and they're looking at pictures of these guys and they're like all depressed and they're all down, I'm like, well, boo-hoo you. And I'll call them on it. And I give a shit if they get upset with me. And that's part of being a coach. I'm like, guys, like, oh, I want to be an actor. And they just kind of look at me. I'm like, no, seriously, I want to be an actor. Like, come on, I'm good on camera. Like, what, 1 year? I can get to your level in 1 year? And they just start laughing at me. They're like, I get the point. No, come on. You've been doing this how long? How long have you been doing this? In like 20 years. I'm like, all right, so 20 years. I should get to where you are in 1 year. I'm like, I get the point, right? It's like,
Yes,
beating
sir.
it to death, but it's no different. But I also see that I could be talking to, I have a client of mine that's worth about $100 billion. Can't mention his name. He's worth about $100 billion. And he was sitting there one day talking to me about how he's unathletic and that fitness has never really been his thing. This was years ago, and how it's never really been able to catch on. This is when he was hiring me. And I said, let me ask you a question. When you started this company, which I can't mention, you would know who it is. I said, did you just wake up every day and go on to YouTube, start pulling up YouTube videos of how to build a business? Or, did you just start pulling up on like, oh, well, let me see, like, we don't know how to develop a, wireframe. How do we do it? Let me just look it up online. Or did you go out and try and find the best people to facilitate that category? Or did you start building the business on your own and then onboard people? Or was everything very thought out? Did you go to bed any night waking up not knowing what you were working on the next day? He goes, of course not. I had my meeting set up for weeks. I knew it. I said, so what are you doing? Think about how you approach your business and think about how you approach your health and wellness. Up until now, you were waking up, pulling up YouTube videos of like scrubs online who didn't know what the hell they were doing. They didn't know the difference between a crunch and a back extension. Would recommend crunches anyway to him. Yeah. Right? His nutrition was like nothing. He was just opening his fridge like, what's for breakfast? This is a guy worth $100 billion. I'm like, so you know what? Get a chef if you have that luxury. Or you know what? If you don't have that money, buy a meal, get a meal service. Or you know what? Go out twice a week and start food prepping. Do what you have to do. There's no excuses. But start putting the same attention you put into your business, or at least half that attention into your health and wellness. And people don't do that. You look at people who are incredibly successful in one category, and you look at areas that they're not, and you wonder why they're not there. Like trainers, that's one of the reasons why I've been doing a lot of these business talks to coaches, because they keep getting certification after certification after certification. And I'm like, guys, enough. Like I keep taking courses, but the certification doesn't matter at this point. You don't know how to manage money. You don't know how to manage time. I pull out a phone and I tell you to sell your product in 30 seconds. You don't even know how to do that. You don't know your elevator pitch in 3 floors. Like I had 10 guys here a few weeks ago that I host once a quarter. It's kind of a little bit of a give back where I invite 10 coaches in. They spend a full day with me. I call it the barn. This is my facility, the barn immersion. And I got all 10 of them on camera. Actually, it was 9 of them. One of them was sick. He couldn't come last minute. But I got all 9 of them on camera. And they couldn't, like their elevator pitch, they were breaking out in hives. And I'm like, guys, like, you gotta be good on camera now. Like, you gotta be a good people person. I know you are, but you're good at talking about things you're comfortable with. What happens when you're on, in a department store or on a street, someone looks at your, oh, where do you work out? Well, I'm actually a coach. Yeah. And having that conversation, like they don't know how to do that. So I'm urging people now to kind of dissect it, look at their lives and say, what are the areas I need to work on? And you know what? It's okay to ask for help.
It's so funny that you say that, Don, because I'm in that place now where I've been on this side of the microphone most of the time. And now with my book, I'm on the other side, and it's kind of called me in the hot seat. When I get the question, I'm going, oh my gosh, man, I don't have my stuff together. And so that's been a big part of the brand and the positioning. And I've been paying the experts like that. Okay, to go to that though, and you're talking about, you don't know your elevator pitch. Let's go back to the individual listening to this show who's thinking about their own personal transformation. I assume that that's what you are going after them with first, is to understand what is it they are here to do? What is the goal? What is the end of the vision look like that they can grasp onto?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, I never wanted to sign up to be a celebrity coach, right? Like it fell on my lap because I was really good. Obviously, I'm a very good trainer. I put my whole life into that, but I'm very good with people, and I'm very good with seeing someone walk into a room and being like, oh boy, we're going to have our work cut out for us today. Like I could just tell on their face, and then I know how to adapt to that, to that individual. So, I think that's part of coaching. It's tough to teach, but I think that's really where the magic happens, because you can hand someone the greatest template on the planet and say, here, it doesn't matter. You have to deviate from that constantly. Like life is throwing too many curveballs at you. There's too many bad nights sleep. There's too many nights that people go out and party or are dehydrated or get off a plane from Singapore that they're showing up like, let's train. And you're like, okay, we got to call an audible here. And And that's really what, in my opinion, that's really what coaching's about.
Well, when you talk about motive, so let's hit that. Are there some motives that won't make it? Meaning, if I am just saying, if it's a negative, I just have to lose weight. Is that a motive enough, or do you need to get me to the positive? Going, okay, but what do you want? What's the
Yeah.
vision?
You're answering your own question right now. And yeah, 100%. Like when someone's coming in, they're like, I got to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is the number 20? Right. Like, and I threw this question at people for years. I still use it on occasions with my challenger groups, but they're like, I need to lose 15 pounds. I'm like, let me throw something at you. Say you put on 5, but you had the exact body that you wanted and your bloods were exactly where they need to be. Where'd you take it? They're like, I need to lose 10. I'm like, you're not listening to me. Mm-hmm. I just said, if I had to put 5 pounds on you right now, but you were to get naked in this room and you're going to look exactly the way, and they're like they don't know how to answer it. Like, people just wrap this number around their head. Like, technically I'm 35 pounds overweight. Like, I go to the doctor's office and they laugh at me. I'm like, doc, my BMI is too high. And they're like, right. They just kind of wave me off. Like, all right, like these are numbers. Like, I'm concerned with body composition, body fat. I'm concerned with mobility. I'm concerned with blood markers. Probably most importantly, so that's why Gabrielle and I get along so well. It's like, how is the car engine running? Right? Like, is that car engine running good, or does the body just look good and it's the car engine? So yeah. I feel like if we get that car engine to where we have that running optimally, then, the body fat piece and the energy piece, that becomes somewhat easy. But you nailed it. The motive, you've got to sit down and you've got to hear what they think is their goals. And then I think sometimes there is some retraining of how they're approaching, their goals, or how they're just approaching everyday life. Like, some people just might have a terrible attitude going in. And, I'm not going to tell you that out of those 40,000 1-hour sessions I worked out with, every one of them have been successful. Like, I've turned around to people and I've been like, no, you don't want this. Like, you don't want this. You keep making every excuse in the book. Like, do you need me to just hold your hand, and do you just want to be here, or do you really want to improve? Because if you want to improve, you're not doing what you need to do right now. I've had people I had a woman that was 900 pounds that we got down to 360, and everything's rolling great. And then out of nowhere, we didn't do it. There was no Ozempic back then. Like, this has been over the last 7-8 years. You can look her up online. Her name's Laura Summers. I did a whole thing with her on the Today Show, but she went from 872 to 360. And then, and I could talk about this right now. She was open about it. And then she, out of nowhere, is like on the phone with me. I don't want to weigh myself anymore. I'm tired of this. I'm like, so don't weigh yourself. Stop. And out of nowhere, like, I'm noticing a pattern. A couple months go by. She's not a client. She's someone that I help out for free, but she's online. And I'm like, Laura, get on the scale right now. What? Laura, get on the scale for me right now. Laura, nah. I made her get on the scale. She jumped on the scale because she was complaining and all this stuff. And we looked down at the scale and it said 430. So she put back 70 pounds. I was like, Laura, like, she wasn't being truthful with me. So you know what? I didn't fire her. I didn't let go of her, but we had to restructure. I had to restructure how I was handling things because I was there for her too much. I said, all right, you got to earn my trust back now. And she's back down, and she's coming back down. She's working on it. And we're rebuilding our relationship. But listen, someone could look at that and say that's a bullshit way to handle it. No, it's not. Like, there's not too many people on the planet that have the experience that I have when it comes to coaching people. And that is how I deal with things. And that's how I get them to improve.
Talk about that in the process, Don, with this. I mean, we can talk about it. I know it relates to anything, whether it's business or relationships or whatever, but in this specific scenario, when somebody's trying to make it easy, lose weight, put on muscle, they're going to start, they're probably going to have some results, pretty quickly, because out of that change, we do that. And then, like you mentioned it a little bit ago, you're going to plateau, or you're going to backslide, or you're going to whatever, something's going to happen. And that's when I know from a business standpoint, in me teaching business, it's that you're excited, you see some results, and then you just kind of lose the steam. Something happens, and a lot of times that's it. That's the death knell for people. And so talk through what people can do to expect that, maybe, or is that fair, to expect it, one, and to sustain through it? and continue on. And you know what? I do want to pull up one thing though, because I saw this. I watched a video from you. I don't even know where it was. And you said 3 times when you would change a program. You said 1, when things get boring, 2, if you get hurt, and 3, when it stops working. So I don't know why that's happened on the video.
That's hysterical. I was just laughing.
I know those balloons. We had fireworks happen, and I had somebody on the show, and I told them that, and they said it happened to me the other day too. So if you use Riverside as your podcast, I have no idea. I'm just going to go that I said something really insightful, and I'm getting applauded by the universe.
I like it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so on the journey, on that, it's not going to be just this. Hey, you start, and even if you do it every day, it's just going to be this consistent trajectory.
Right. I mean, there's no human being that's ever done it, right? It's impossible. Like there's never been a human being that continuously improves. I think at anything. I don't know if it's ever existed. It's physically impossible. Like you've never, like if I continually improved in the gym, I'd be the most in shape person in the world. I'd be the strongest human being that ever lived.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. So I think we really need to start paying attention more to a feeling. I actually disagreed with a lot of strength coaches for years. They'd be like, what's your goal? And I'd be like, I don't have one. You have to have a goal. Like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? I have to train for well, you have to pick a goal. Like you got to set a goal and you got to train for a goal. And I'm like, nonsense. I never trained for a goal. My goal was always to come in to be as physically fit as possible, as strong as possible, to have the highest levels of body composition, best levels of body composition, strength, to take my shirt off to look a certain way, feel energetic. And that's a tough thing to check all those boxes. But I've done it. I've done it, but I've not been on the steady climb. Like my training career has been, and it's normal. Like certain areas, like endurance might get great for a few months, and you know how it is. And out of nowhere, you're going out for runs or you're going out for bikes, and like the engine's just not there. Why? It could be anything. It could be the time of year. It could be your stress levels. Maybe you're not getting as much sleep. Maybe your hydration is not the same. Maybe your body, maybe your CNS is just tapped out. Maybe you're just pushing that, you're leaning on that, door so much that at a certain point, the body just needs rest. So, I really believe that, but the one thing that can be consistent is a feeling. Like I had to get in this morning and I had to wake up at 4:30 and I had to train here at 5. Fortunately, my back door is 60 feet from here. So I have a nice luxury of having a commercial grade gym, 2 floors, and I have all the equipment I could ever need. But, I come out here in the morning and I'm drinking a little caffeine and I'm starting my warm up and I'm a little tired and I'm getting into it and I feel great. And then I left here. Did I set my personal best on every lift today? Absolutely not. I executed every rep today to the best of my ability. I did everything with such a high level of quality, and I brought the most intensity I could have brought to the table today. And guess what? I left here, I showered, I did some work, ate breakfast. I was on the 726 train to go in and see Ryan and Blake today. And then I was back out here fulfilling my obligations for the rest of the day. I did what I needed to do to be successful today. And people aren't focusing on that feeling. They're focusing on, I got to hit a number, right?
Well, I want to even ask you about we all would love to find that thing that works in everything. Again, you keep crossing over into business. So business, life, relationship, this is what works. I'm done. Don't have to think about it again. I'm done for life. I can do this for my entire existence. Now, we know in business, that's impossible these days. At some point, you're going to have to innovate or you're going to get taken over by somebody else. You've got to be looking at the next thing. Well, physically, that's interesting because I tend to want to look at that. What's the best thing to eat? What's the best exercise program? That's what I'm going to do day in and day out. Okay, I see you shaking your head.
It's the same thing, but it's the same thing with, it's just, you answered it. It's the same thing with business. You can't continue to, there's a couple of coaches who are older than me that were massively successful in the 80s and 90s, and they became like obsolete because they didn't want to evolve. They just wanted to come in with the mindset of, well, no, I have the best club, and these are the people that came to me for years, and I'm going to keep selling that. I'm like, you have to evolve. It's the same thing with your training. I could be, and nutrition, I could be eating a certain way for months, and then out of nowhere, like my body is just getting a little bit tired of my carbs being so high. Yeah. Or maybe I need to drop the carbs and bring the fats up. Maybe I got to pay a little more attention to metabolic flexibility. And maybe I've been leaning into one lane too much. And it's just, that's normal to happen. And that's what screws people up because they turn around and they say to themselves, but this worked for me once,
Yeah.
right? This worked for, like, I was in a caloric deficit once and that worked for me. Like, you can't be in caloric deficits your entire life. Like, the best example I give for that is a car. If you're to get in your car right now and go for a car ride on the highway and you keep driving and you don't pay attention to that gas light, at a certain point, that car is going to stop on the middle of the highway, correct?
Yeah.
The human body, it's different. The human body is going to start assessing the fact that you're feeding it less gasoline, less nutrition, and then your body's going to start adjusting for that. Well, he used to have me on a 3,000 calorie diet. Now I'm on 1,500 calories a day. And for the first few weeks, I was okay. But now I got to start slowing down the amount I move. All right. And then you start getting tired. And then people start putting body fat on. And then they're confused on the why. Well, I only eat 1,200 calories a day and I can't lose weight. I'm like, no, because your body, your metabolism, it has gotten so acclimated to be at that level. And that's why I take a reverse dieting approach. So many people who live like that, I'll actually spend months bringing their calories up methodically, strategically, in a very slow, thought out process. And I will see that 9 out of 10 times they either lose weight or they drop a significant amount of body fat. And they're like, how's that possible? I've got 10,000 people in my group. I can literally lean on probably 500 of my challengers. I could get testimonials right now for all. I could show you women right now that are eating 3,300 calories a day, that weigh 130 pounds at 5'7", 5'8", that have abs. Moms that have had 3-4 kids that have abs now, and they're eating more food than they've ever eaten. But that takes time. We're not going to bump their calories up to their total daily energy expenditure, meaning how many calories is that person supposed to be burning in a day. We're not going to bring them up 1,000 calories in a day. But if they're 1,000 calories off, if they're consuming 1,200 calories a day and they need to be at 2,200 calories, I might bring them up 200 in week 1, 200 in week 2. It might take me 5 weeks to get them up to that point. And then I want to level them off at that point. And then I want to train and I want them to be active and I want them to move. And then their body composition changes.
Well, hit that, Don, on that. I mean, you know that one of the biggest things out there right now is fasting, or specifically intermittent fasting. And everybody wants to say, okay, that's what I do. I eat in this 8-hour window. That's it. And again, I want that to work every day. And I guess from an analogy standpoint, back to what you talked about, I'm going to put it in cycles and seasons. That, we're at an interesting time where we can eat whatever we want every day. I can have blueberries every single day. Well, that's only been a short span of time that's even possible. Back in the day, you ate that when it was blueberry season, and then you didn't. And so to come back to this with how I eat and how I exercise, I found that, I'm really into mountain biking right now. I'm loving it, man. I've drawn out to the trail. And then I wake up one day and realize, man, I'm just kind of tired of it. I'll do it a little bit, but I may transition to, let's get back into some more resistance training or trail running or, whatever, yoga or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what I hear you saying is that would be natural. That would be natural. So again, to find that one thing that you're going to do, that you're always going to intermittent fast, you're always going to do X, Y, Z, is probably not going to be sustainable. You are going to plateau, maybe even decline.
The problem, and the question really is about intermittent fasting right now, but I see so many more doors open up. There's so many other things, but let's dive into the intermittent fasting. And I love that question. The problem is you'll have one expert that does it. And I'm going to say a guy that I like, that I think is very smart, like David Perlmutter, right? David's a seasoned, doctor, David Perlmutter. He's probably in the 70s now, right?
Probably a huge name, a lot of respect.
Huge name, a lot of respect. I've done some podcasts with him. He's a lovely, lovely man. But, David's, talking about, intermittent fasting from a scientific standpoint, from a longevity standpoint. David's going to live a much different lifestyle than, another client of mine who's 70 years old that's in Ironmans, mm-hmm. right?
Right.
So take my client who's in his 70s, who's doing Ironmans, trains a lot. Right? We got to manage a lot of stress. He's in his 70s and he's doing it. But he needs nutrition. Mm-hmm. He now has so you're trying to tell me that this guy running Ironmans now is going to have an 8-hour window? That's a window of opportunity. Every hour that we're awake, that's an opportunity for us to consume nutrition. When you narrow down that window of opportunity, how many calories, how much nutrition can you get in that 8-hour window? Like, if you're lucky, most people, maybe 3. maybe for
I want
meals.
to insert. Yeah, I want to insert in there. I struggle with being one of those guys who can just down some gigantic plate of food. I mean, I just struggle. I got some digestive issues, and so
Sure.
for me to be put in a little finite box and have to eat enough to sustain what I'm doing, I have not found it to be possible.
It also has to be trained, right? Like it
Okay,
reminds you of the
sure.
person. It reminds you of the person who hasn't had breakfast. So like, I'm not a breakfast person. When's the last time you had breakfast? So like 3 years ago. I'm like, all right, well, you haven't had breakfast in 3 years. You're complaining about energy issues. You're clearly not getting enough fiber. You're clearly not getting enough protein.
Yeah,
You're not getting enough carbs and fats, which are your energy sources. You're not getting enough nutrition. So it's clear to me right now that we have to increase calories. So the first place I'm going to go to is breakfast. But I can't eat breakfast. I'm not hungry. I'm like, okay, we're going to have 1 egg for breakfast and some blueberries. Well, that's not enough food. Maybe it's not. But we got to get your body to start
yeah,
adjusting. So it's like that example I gave with the woman who needs to increase her calories by 1,000. I'm not throwing 1,000 on her day on day
right.
one, 200, 200, 200. So what I might do is it might be like an egg and some blueberries for week one. And the next, you're really full for the first few days. And then after come week two, you're like, I can handle a little more food. I'm like, let's throw another egg in there. And then a couple weeks later, like, I'm starting to get more hungry. Great. Like, let's, we could throw some leftover protein on your plate. Or you know what? Do you have some fruit? Or I'm sorry, do you have some vegetables? Or maybe we can mix some oatmeal in there to get some more fiber, right? And then I start slowly increasing those calories. Then we're having a conversation 4, 5, 6 weeks later, and they're having a normal sized meal. I'm like, look, we had to train you to start consuming that nutrition. The problem is we get discouraged. Day one, we go to the gym. We're not used to working out. Next day, we do too much. We can't move. I'm too sore. I don't like this feeling. The first day of being on so-and-so's diet, you feel like you're going to throw up because you're overfed and you feel uncomfortable. And then you're like using the bathroom all day and you feel like it's uncomfortable. We don't want to take our time with these sort of things. And I think with intermittent fasting, I am a fan of it for specific individuals. Now, if someone's sedentary, if they're massively overweight, if they're not moving much, we can try this, right? Like if they're already in such a caloric surplus, we could try this, but you better make sure you're getting enough nutrition in the other meals, because we want to always focus on protein, carbs, and fats. But I had clients lose weight recently because we just focused on fiber. There's so many areas of your nutrition that most people just aren't paying attention to. If they're not assessing, they're guessing. But as for IF, there are people out there that are going to be successful. There are Ironman. There are people running Ironmans or doing Ironmans that might do it, that might be successful. But statistically, it's not pointing me in the direction that I'm going to put someone into that category.
And I do want to get granular some to resources even on your website and whatnot for people to go to figure this stuff out, because we're talking about the concepts and people are going, okay, well, what do I, where do I step? I want to come to that. I do want to hit a couple things though. First, one of them, which is again something that I'm seeing in the limelight a lot, just like intermittent fasting, is the age aspect. So let's take me. Okay, let's take me and say that I'm, roughly, I kind of tend to hover around 165. I'm real close to 6 foot tall, so I'm there. Now I could be 15 pounds overweight of fat and under muscled, and I want to come over here and I want to get a good, chiseled physique to some degree. Okay, but let's take me doing that at 20 years old, and now let's take me doing that at, well, I'm just about to turn 53. At 53. Talk a little bit about the differences in how you're going to address that in regards to what does age do? Because we're seeing that a lot now. There's some dude on the internet you're seeing is like Fit Grandpa, and he's promoting all this stuff about how it changes. And so again, to that information that we see out there that people are going, okay, do I need to do it different? Tell me.
Yeah, there's certain areas that I think aren't going to change, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talks about. I think protein, you need to be around that gram per pound of body weight. I think as we're aging, statistically, we can and will lose muscle if we're not working on it. So I think protein still needs to be, pretty, significant. If you're not eating enough meals, that's going to be a really difficult thing to do. So for someone like you, I would turn around and first thing I would do is I want to have an understanding of the quality of foods that you eat, because I'm probably going after quality first over making sure like you're eating enough. Like if you're eating 2 meals a day at McDonald's, like, I'm more concerned that like you're consuming good, healthy nutrition and building some consistency there. And then we could start increasing that macronutrient intake. Because when you start eating a more healthy diet and you're eating foods that are fibrous, you're going to get like this stuff, you get full really easily on it, right? It's like when you look at bodybuilders, like a lot of them on YouTube, it's been funny. They're doing this like 20,000 calorie a day challenge, or like they'll turn around and try and consume 20,000 calories a day. And they'll do it by eating crap, right? Because it's much more calorically dense fat. Obviously, you're going to consume much more calories. It's easier to get high calories in when you're eating crappy food. Now, I had a few of my bodybuilder friends turn around and said, all right, now everyone saw me do the 20,000 calorie last week diet. Now I'm going to try and do 20,000 calories eating clean, how I would eat for a prep. And every guy I saw try and get through it didn't even make it halfway through. By 8,000 calories, they were ready to vomit because it was so fibrous and so filling. So there's things that are going to happen differently. So the first thing I'm looking at with you is where your protein is and where your food quality is. And then I want to look at, how much nutrition are you getting in? How are all your markers? I might use an app like Chronometer, or pronounced Chronometer. And I'm going to be able to look at your vitamin levels. I'm going to be able to look at, your fiber levels of fiber, protein, carbs, fats. And granted, is everything to a point? No, because vitamins and minerals, those things, blood work is going to tell us that. I'll go to Dr. Gabrielle, I'll look at someone's bloods with her, and then we can determine whether they're deficient in an area or not. And those are the first steps that I'm really taking. I'm going to look at hydration. I'm going to look at sleep. And then at that point, it's like, okay, what have you been doing with training? It's like, then we can start tweaking training. But I built, oh my God, and in the last 25 years of doing this professionally, thousands of programs, thousands and thousands and thousands of programs. And I've written a lot of good programs. And like, is there one that stands out over the other? Like, there's principles now, maybe at this time in my life, that I'm paying attention to a little bit differently than when I was 20, right? It was, back when I was 20, the warm up was kind of like a little like, all right, like we don't need to do mobility. Like, let's just get into it and let's attack it. Now, I'm spending 15, 20 minutes every day working on mobility.
Let me ask on that. When you say all those programs, okay, I'll just speak personally. I'll own this. That sounds kind of like, holy smokes, I don't really want to hear that. I really want to hear you say, look, dude, what's your goals? There's one program that'll do it.
Yeah.
Or
without. I'm not saying that like you've got to do 20,000 programs. I'm saying that like I've written so many programs because I'm writing them for different people with different needs. Fair. And if someone's coming into me and they're like, oh my God, I absolutely hate dumbbells. I despise dumbbells. I'm like, okay, like, why do I have to write them a program with dumbbells? Like, is there really something that stands out for me so much? Like, what, I'm not a good enough coach where I can't give them a training stimulus with kettlebells or with cables or with barbells? Of course I can. So and there's so many ways to dress programs differently. Obviously, everyone thinks about the training split, right? Upper, lower, full bodies, push, pull legs. There's so many, I can go on and on and on, but then there's things that we can adjust our programs with, tempo and rep schemes and clusters and drop sets. And I can go on and on and on and throw these terms out that most people are going to be like, what the hell is that? That's how the program looks and feels different. But the reality is, if you take care of the things I told you to take care of, and you get on a sensible workout, it doesn't have to be the best program in the world, and you pay attention to things like your nutrition and your hydration and your rest, great things are going to happen. It does not have to be, I'm not selling myself here, it does not have to be a program written by me. Like, there's a lot of great coaches out there that can write good programs and that can allow you to go into the gym for 20 minutes a day, 3-4 days a week, and you can find a result off of.
Talk about the age thing. You talked about nutrition. Talk about it on the exercise thing. Again, go between the 20-year-old me and the 50-year-old me. Are you going to, if I'm looking for a similar physique result, is it going to be any different or is it not? Regardless.
Yeah. I think looking at someone's the training age and age are two different things. Like I'm 40, I'm going to be 47 in April. So I'm 46 now. And, but my training age is I'm probably about 30 years old, meaning I've been training for 30 years. I've been working in the industry for 25, but training for 30 years. So I think like a younger kid is going to be handling a bit more volume. I think someone in their 50s, we probably want to come out of the gate with more of a minimalistic approach. And we really want to pay attention to waiving their blocks of training, meaning like if I start taking someone like you and I start pushing you into a little bit more volume work, then you can't always stay with that level of volume. We have to taper you off that. Otherwise, your joints are going to get hammered. So, and this gets into the argument of like, well, what's the best workouts? Is it bodybuilding? Is it full bodies? Like at the end of the day, I can take, let's say someone does legs on Monday, right? And they do 20 sets for their legs on Monday, or they spread those 20 sets out throughout the week, 4 sets a day for 5 days. We're still accumulating the same amount of volume, right? But it looks a lot different. I'm hitting a little bit of legs every day. Now, the intensity is going to change, right? The recovery is going to change. Like, are you going in and are you crushed the next day? There's so many things I'm looking at. But for someone in their 50s right now, I'm going to really pay attention to volume. I'm going to pay really close attention to movement quality in their warm-up. There's specific exercises I might have to stay away from because especially early on, their body just can't handle it. Where, you know, a young 20-year-old, if they're moving really well, they're incredibly mobile, and they're somewhat elastic, it's like, you know, you can get their body primed and warmed up and you can get them into pretty good positions pretty easily. They're going to be sore as hell the next day, and in the following day, they're going to recover. It's just that's just really how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in that, where I tend to, and I think it comes from being a pro cyclist, man, where you're at full tilt boogie, you're anaerobic. I still get stuck in that. I feel like, man, if I am not killing it, if I'm not, if my heart rate's not 190, I'm not getting anything done. And then I see you guys doing some of these things, and it's slow and methodical, and you're resting in between it. And my mentality.
I think we need a little bit of I think we need a little bit of everything, though. I think that's like what you do, I think is important, but it's important, you know, in doses, in smaller doses, right? And I think like sometimes what I do, maybe you need that smaller doses. I mean, you got to look at what's the main goal here. If you're, and I work with an ultra marathon runner right now. You know, the woman's running 100 miles. But she's from New Zealand. She's been a challenger of mine for a while. And, you know, she's continuing to do my programs for the last 3 years. We have to adjust the volume. We have to cut that back down drastically. We have to cut down the intensity. But I want that, you know, I want that stability in her body. And she's tapering into this phase right now where she's doing a lot of hill running. And she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, this is what I think, but this is uncharted territory right now for me, because science will point me in one direction, yet you got to see how you recover over the next month or so. And every week over the last month, like, we just got lucky. She's been improving her time. And she's like, how do you feel? Like, I feel great. Last night I spoke with her. She's like, hip flexor's a little tight. I'm like, okay, no problem. Let's do some glute, do a little bit of light glute work for high rep, and let's do some cow stretching, do some hip 90-90 with the kettlebell. Let's go 2 rounds of that. Let's spend 7-8 minutes on it. Tell me how you feel. And it's like, we've been hitting the bullseye on the nose. We've been hitting the bullseye straight on, but you know, it doesn't always work that way.
I mean, in essence, it sounds like you're talking, I mean, this is functional medicine in essence of going, and there are some tenets. I mean, there are some ingredients that are going to have to be, you're going to have to eat. You're going to have to eat good food. You're going to have to move. You're going to have to do resistance training. You're going to have to do cardio. And then, of course, I'm like everybody else, man. I want a pill. Just tell me what to do and do it. And you're going, it just doesn't exist. It's a completely individualized. And so, like, the answer to everything is, well, it depends. Fair?
Yeah, and it sucks to hear that, because I mean, it does depend to an extent, right? But it also, like, listen, over-the-counter programs work. I mean, look at mine. I mean, I've done a really nice job in creating programs that people can utilize globally. I'm also not assigning Olympic snatching to someone because it's a highly technical movement. I'm assigning movements, and I'm assigning approach that's really safe yet very, very effective. And we can nail it on the head most of the time, but you know what? Every once in a while, someone's like, "Oh, had an ACL reconstruction a few months ago." Like, okay, or MCL or labral tear. Okay, like, we got to call audibles here, or like, doctor doesn't want me jumping because I screwed my knee up. Like, okay, we got to call an audible. That's coaching, though, right? That's coaching. But certain things in life, like, just haven't really. They might have evolved, but like, the bike is still a bike, right? It's still on 2 wheels, right? Like, whether it's you riding it today on a brand new bike or someone's racing the Tour de France 30, 40 years ago, it's still a bike. I know the construction became better and lighter and carbon fiber now and all this crazy stuff, but the bike still looks the same. Squatting, people are still squatting, they're still lunging, they're still doing pull-ups. Like, there's certain things that just aren't going to go away. We created better machines and better ways to incorporate variability. Nutritionally, like, we're not replacing vegetables. I know we want to come out with greens, powders, and all this stuff, but protein is protein, carbs are carbs, good carbs are good carbs. We need good healthy fats. We need micronutrients, and there's certain things that unfortunately a pill is not going to replace. Now, we call these things supplements for a reason. They're a supplement. Like, and that's what drives me nuts about, oh, well, if you eat all the right real foods, you shouldn't need supplements. Like, yeah, but most people don't. So that's why they need supplements, right? It's like, it just,
we don't assimilate what we take in a lot of times.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so, I mean, on one hand, it sucks to hear that it's so individualized, but on the other hand, I want people to hear, if they're frustrated with what they're doing because it's not getting results, that there's an algorithm that will work for you. We're trying to figure that out. And I want to take that, Don. Let's dispel the thing. Okay, so if you're Ryan Reynolds and you've got, money and opportunity, I can hire you to, come up to my house and train with my wife and I can devote as much time as I want to. Obviously, that's not the average person with the average life who's looking at this, okay, and going, man, I got to fit this in. I know this is an elementary as heck question, but I got to fit this into my life. I'm not a full-time fitness person, but I do want to look this way. I want to feel this way. Can I literally incorporate this in it without it feeling like I just took on another full-time job?
100%'s the answer. That's number one. And number two, I actually happen to think, like, I've worked with everyone, pretty much all types. I think a lot of times when you're working with someone like Ryan, I feel like scheduling is more difficult. I really do. I think, because think about it, like John Smith in New York City, he's waking up every morning at a certain time. He's living in his Manhattan apartment and he's going off to his work and he knows his schedule and there's no variability. Like, this strike lifts today, Ryan's shooting for the next 3 days to make up for something that he did months ago. And if this strike lifts, then he's on a plane in a week and he's going to be away from his family for months and he's in a different time zone and he's going to be getting up at 4 a.m. to train and he's going to be shooting on film. He's going to be shooting all day long from whatever it is, 6 o'clock till sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night, because if a camera busts or something happens and they have that site, they have to keep going. Guess what? Time's not going to wait for him. And then he's got to wake up the next day and he's got to do it again at an early hour. I've had clients of mine turn around who have shot all day long in Manhattan, and in the next 3 days, they have to shoot overnight. And they have kids and they have no nanny. And they're literally trying to balance this out with friends and whatever. So I think sometimes we're under this assumption that because the celebrity, they're on the big screen, that they're always kind of rolling in the situation, that it's always perfect, that it's always ideal. And it's just not. Now, granted, they, they're in a good situation. I know every one of them I work with are very blessed. The thing I've always been shocked about is how they manage that schedule and stress. It is hard, right? Like, I saw when Blake delivered her new baby, she was getting up at 3 a.m. and going into New York City to shoot a movie by 5. I mean, that's difficult when you're a new mom to have to do that all day, right? And that's things that I think a lot of these people aren't getting credit for. And it's something that I admire them for. And maybe they're going to kill me for saying this, but it's still the reality that, like, I respect the fact that at any given point, there's a massive curveball thrown in their schedule, whether it's their day, their week, their month, their year. They could be shooting something in, I could be shooting something in Dubai. It's like, out of nowhere, he's gone now for 3, 4, 5 months. And it's like, wow, that's a big challenge, being on the other side of the world from your family.
Talk about, Don, building versus maintenance. So let's take Ryan Reynolds, and you work with him, and it's pretty, acute or intense, I should say, to put on X amount of muscle to play Deadpool or whatever. But at some point he's there and now filming starts. I'm assuming that you guys did a lot of work to get him to that point to build. And I'm taking this to the average person to get to that place, to lose the weight, to gain the muscle, to do whatever. It's significant to make the transformation. Once it's there, though, someday, and they look at Ryan and go, you're ready. You're Deadpool. You look like what we want. He's there. Now it's just the maintenance. What's the percentage to maintain of effort as opposed to the effort to get to there?
Listen, because he has that foundation, he has that base set up, it's going to be a lot easier than someone who is trying to build and doesn't have 20 years of training experience, right? I think at the point of when he's off shooting his movie, I want him to continue to challenge himself, right? I want him to continue to go after it, but I also want him to understand that you got to pay attention to your readiness every day and how you feel. So I think we always put a lot of emphasis into getting that body loose, unwinding, hydration first thing in the morning, maybe get a quick little meal in the system. And at that point, take our time and let's start marinating the sets. Some things I've been doing differently with him, or even my own training, is where in the past I wasn't really starting with some high rep work. Now I am. I'm coming in with some really easy after the warm up, meaning after the mobility work. I'm coming in with some really easy high repetition work at a very low intensity to just get that joint moving and get that blood pumping a little bit. Where in the past, it's like, well, that's going to eat into your strength. And you're not going to be able to move as much weight. And it's like not really my goal. My goal is for him to be strong, to have that body armor on his body to protect himself, most importantly. Body armor, muscle is a protection really over what it looks like in the suit, because right now he's ready. He can jump into the suit and look great, and his acting's great, and he's going to kill it, knock it out of the park. Like, I want him to be resilient. So when he does his own stunt or he does something stupid and he falls or does a flip and does something, his body can withstand that punch. And I think really the thing I'm going to leave him with, and I say to him in every movie, is like, dude, just listen to how you feel that morning. I'm not worried about your intensity. I am not worried about your dedication or your effort to all this. But if you're waking up one morning and you're feeling like, just take a couple extra sets, ease into it. Let's go at 80%. Let's get in. Let's get out. Let's feel good. Let's go off on a set feeling like $1 million. And for me, that's my wish.
Tell me about time. Again, going back to the guy who's, got his job, lives in Manhattan, goes to the same thing every day. He's got kids in school, whatever, and, or the mom, whatever, that we're looking at it and going, I mean, everybody thinks that they don't have enough time. And we're looking at the time to actually do a physical effort, whatever that is, cardio or resistance training or whatever it is. And the time, as you talked about, to figure out, how am I going to fuel this? Am I going to meal prep? Am I going to buy this? Am I going to eat out? Am I going to do whatever? To say, this is what you're looking at from a time expenditure. If you want to be where you want to be and maintain it, how would you quantify it?
Yeah. Time. I think starting with the person who just wants to want it and the person who has just struggled to get to the gym. I would urge them to attempt 10 to 20 minutes a day of just like, even if it's not in the gym, just how about this? You're the person who just, every time you get on a plane, you fall off. You've been completely inconsistent. You've been terrible at this. This has never worked for you. I want 10 minutes a day. Figure out something that's going to pump your heart rate a little bit higher. It could be taking the steps, 3 times to your office rather than the elevator and accumulating extra steps. Do something that's going to make you feel better. And I think at a very low barrier of entry, I'm telling people, just give me 10 minutes a day. Do something. Well, is that enough? Of course it's enough, because you're going to feel better. You're going to make better food choices. You're going to be drinking more water. Your mood's going to be better. And I think seeing that consistency develop and seeing yourself stick with something, you're going to want to keep it going. And I definitely would rather someone, do 10 minutes a day of not doing anything at all. Now, you take an avid gym goer, someone who's, wanting to get there and wanting to, actually enjoys it. Like, I would say around 45 minutes is fine. I mean, I go longer with that because I put a little more time into my warm up, and I think 45 minutes is, more than plenty of time to get in all the work that you need. Now, if someone only had 30 minutes, can I get it done? Absolutely. Sure. It really, for me, it's like, I would say start with the time that you feel like you can dedicate most consistently. So when someone comes to me and they're like, I want you to build me a program. And I'm like, well, what are you thinking days wise? Well, what do I need? 5 days? I'm like, well, what did you do in your last program? They're like, well, 3 to 4 was really kind of good for me. 5 was tough. I'm like, well, why don't we just go with 4 then? Well, is that enough? Yeah, that's plenty, because now my program design, if you're going to give me 4 and be consistent with 4, I'll build out everything that you need in those 4 days to make sure that you're giving me everything that you need to create that training stimulus. But I don't want someone to commit to 6 days and then they're just kind of like, oh, I'm getting 4 and I'm missing work that I need to be getting in, and I've been inconsistent in this area, and now in these days I'm just throwing in things that I want to do. Like, I want you to feel successful. I want you to close out the week knowing that you did what you needed to do.
Tell me about then recovery, because of course we, from the media standpoint, all we're doing is taking the pictures of Hugh Jackman just killing it and sweating bullets, and you and Ryan, and you're working out and you're yelling encouragement to him, and that's all about the breaking down. And then you got a guy like Ryan, let's use him, who's busy, who's jet setting here, who's getting up at 1 a.m. to film or whatever. And I know you got to be saying, dude, you got to recover. I mean, that you've got to recover. And for us, we've got to recover, and what that looks like from your coaching standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, number one is sleep, right? Like, sleep and nutrition are the 2 first things I'm going to throw in that category. if we are underfueled and we don't have enough protein, protein's your muscle building block. So if you don't have enough protein, you're not going to rebuild, that muscle that you're breaking down. And if you don't have enough carbs and fats in your body, then your body's going to start utilizing that protein, which is supposed to be the muscle building block, and it's going to start converting protein to energy. So now we're going to be taking away the job that protein is supposed to be doing and using it for something else. So now we're going to be eating into our development from, building muscle. When I say building muscle, that's not something I want, especially women, to get freaked out about. Like when I'm working with Blake Lively or Emily Blunt or Cindy Crawford in the past, I worked with her back in my club. Like our goal was always resiliency, building muscle, not to get bigger, but to have that body armor to where their bodies were resilient and their metabolism was working efficiently. So recovery, I'm always saying that nutrition and sleep is going to trump all the cold plunges and all the infrared saunas. Listen, I got a couple of cold plunges in my backyard here. I've got a bunch of saunas out here. I use them. I enjoy them. They make me feel better mentally, and it's a nice little cherry on the ice cream that I'm throwing on there. But none of that stuff should outweigh sleep.
Before I just want to hit on some of the resources that you've got, hit some of the big ones. When you're working with somebody, they want to get results, that you've talked about clean eating. I assume that, you are looking at the junk food, the empty carbs, you're looking at sugar specifically. When I hear the celebrity stuff, a lot of times you hear them mention like alcohol. You mentioned alcohol, not being able to do that. Tell me the deal killers out there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's shit, right? Like it just is. And that's, it's funny sometimes because people want you to be like, well, my doctor said a glass of wine a night's fine. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Like it's not fine if you want to get on the cover of a magazine, or if it's not fine if you want to be on stage, or if you want to get your body fat, down to a specific level. It's not fine. And they'll fire back to me like, well, I drink vodka. It's clean. It's clear. It's gluten-free. There's no calories. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not worried about, like, do I drink alcohol? Once in a while, I like having a few beers. And when I say beers, I don't mean like Coors Lights. My wife and I go snowboarding with the kids, and it's kind of our activity. And we like getting these nice, like giraffes, like, like IPAs or like a lager or something that's kind of like a meal. And we'll sit there and we'll have a couple of them and we'll really enjoy it. And that's awesome. But, people are almost shocked. Like, you drink beer? And I'm like, what am I supposed to? I want to drink. What am I supposed to drink? Well, you don't want to drink something that's like gluten-free or clear. I'm like, alcohol is alcohol. It's toxic. It's a toxin. I don't give a shit about the 200 calories or 100 calories I'm getting from the beer, or a little bit of the sugar I'm getting from the mojito. The alcohol is going to beat the crap out of me hormonally. It's going to ruin my sleep quality that night. Typically, if I have more than 2 beers, I typically wake up at 3 in the morning and my heart is racing for a reason. My body is not used to the toxins in there. It's trying to get rid of it. I'm trying to detoxify that from my body. So I'm way more concerned with the toxification from alcohol. When people are like, oh, well, I drink clear. I'm like, all right, well, if you're drinking 5 nights a week to where that's going to justify it for you, then there's still a problem, right? Yeah. But alcohol is, without a doubt, it might be one of the worst things that you can put in your body. Now, do I urge everyone to go enjoy a few drinks once in a while if they want to? Absolutely. I do. I enjoy it. I don't go overboard. There's a time in my life, maybe in my 20s or my teens, I used to. But now I very easily can go out and have 2 beers and be like, I'm done. And then I'll go home and I'll drink some water and wake up the next day and go about my day like nothing happened. It still might feel a little bit off from that, right? That's not a big deal, but I'm not going to sit there and justify that alcohol is good. Now, if you're someone that, eats well and you exercise and you're healthy, and your blood work's good, and you live a good quality of life, and you want to go out every night and have a glass of wine, if that's your vice, and let it be the worst thing that you do. No big deal. But if you're sitting there and you're consuming alcohol on the daily, and you're complaining about body composition, and you're complaining about sleep quality, then that's on you. And that's something that could be fixed really easily by eliminating that. I mean, I'll never forget, I'm looking up at it right now because one of my covers is there. Back in 2018, I had 5 weeks to get ready for my first cover of Muscle & Fitness. And I was already counting macros. I was eating beautifully. And I remember I had a couple nights of drinking that month. And I remember I just removed alcohol for 5 weeks. I think I lost like 7 pounds.
Wow.
Like you don't realize, and I already had single digit body fat. You don't realize the amount of water retention it pulls back into your body and what you end up holding, and the inflammation and the puffiness. And anytime you see someone go cold turkey and they do a dry November or dry January, whatever the hell it's called nowadays, there's like a dry month for everything. You always hear that they end up losing a significant amount of weight. So to answer your question, I think alcohol is, it's a killer. But again, I'm not telling people to avoid it all the time if they have other things in their life in check.
Well, if most people have on the show have a book like Gabrielle, we're talking about her book,
Yeah.
Forever Strong. And I want people to have a resource to go further in that. Now, I talked about it at the beginning of the show at your website, donsaladino.com. You have, I don't even know I know some of the programs there, but talk to that. So if people, they've heard this, they've heard all the individualization, what can they go towards? And I do want to say, whatever you're doing there, or I don't know if it's for all the programs, but at least for the ebooks you said, or the e-programs.
Yeah. For the ebook,
discount.
for the e-programs, there is a discount. There's a quiz that you can take, and it'll shuttle you into a program. It'll give you a choice of programs depending on what your goals are. I've got 3 different things that I really offer on my platform. I have my app, which is a company I've been partners in for probably the last 8 years. Very low barrier of entry price point. You get your programs for the year. If you like apps, the tech is incredible. And that's on my website. You'll just see it's $14.99 a month. You get all these programs. It really is probably the best bang for your buck that you're going to get. I have my challenges, which I think are my most valuable, because you can enter into my challenge for $100, but then you get coached by me 5 days a week. So what happens is I give you a program, and you get a full video library of exercise of your workouts. You get my full nutrition guide, my supplement guide, bonus workouts, and you get a full workout plan for a month. But then you get entered into a private Facebook group, and you can ask me questions Monday through Friday, and I basically answer them, Monday through Friday. So I'm answering all those questions. I'm literally calling your name out. I'd be like, hey, Kevin, you asked me the question about the intermittent fasting. This is what I think about. I'm answering on video like you guys are watching right now.
I think that's a video I saw of you that I pulled something out. It was one
Yeah.
where you were talking to your members and literally addressing questions.
Yeah. And so that's that. And then I've got the third option, which is what I'm giving everyone a discount for. And that's my programs. And that's where you can take the quiz and you're downloading a program. You get a PDF. It's got the full video library in it of the exercises. You still get all the other, some other bonus stuff in there. And, but there's really no communication with me throughout that. You will have access to a private Facebook group, but I answer those questions maybe once a month. So if you want hands-on, you do the challenges. And if you want to just be kind of left alone, you can go to either the app or you can go to the programs, because that's a PDF and you're pretty much on your own. But I really do a good job, and my team do a great job in putting together a whole FAQ section on frequently asked questions, and we really try and cross all our T's and dot all our I's. So I'm really proud of it. It really is something that we built up over the last 4 years, developing that infrastructure. But now, it's really been like a culmination of the 25 years of me in this career.
Well, and so I'll reiterate kind of where we started, which was you saying, if we're going to be serious, as we are in our work and our businesses, to be that serious about our health and wellness, we need to go find the best. That's why I brought Don on to the show. So I'll repeat that again, guys. It's Don Saladino, like salad, I-N-O, donsaladino.com. And if you go through the quiz, find something there. And if you do the e-programs, 20% off when you use the code DRIVE. So I'm grateful for everybody showing up here. Tune into the next show and you'll hear what specifically personally drives Don Saladino. And if you appreciate the podcast here and want to share it with others, give us a rating on Spotify, give us a review on Apple, and talk about this show specifically, what you heard and what helped you from what Don has shared. You can see what we're doing and check him out in it's the barn, right, that you're sitting in right now with us.
Yeah.
Check it out. You can watch us on YouTube and you see the whole thing there. You can find that. We'll do a bunch of clips on social media, and you can always find me at Kevin Miller, CO. And if you want to learn how to master your own inner drive, check out my book, What Drives You, on Amazon. And until next time, folks, stay driven.
Yeah.